Okay, let's just take a second to process the last few days. A US-Israeli airstrike takes out the entire leadership of the Iranian regime. A multi-billion-dollar AI contract gets flipped, basically overnight. And right in the middle of all that chaos, Bitcoin just goes on an absolutely wild ride. Now you might be thinking, what on earth do these three things have to do with each other? Well, as you're about to see, they are all pieces of the same incredible story. Let's connect the dots.
It all kicked off in the dead of night, early Saturday morning, with a headline that sent shockwaves around the entire planet. A joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike had hit Tehran, targeting the intelligence and defense ministries and the supreme leader's own residence. It didn't take long for confirmation to come through. Ayatollah Khamenei was dead, his body reportedly found in the rubble, along with his top military command.
And this is where things get weird. The market's reaction made no sense at all. I mean, in a crisis of this magnitude, money is supposed to flood into safe haven assets, right? Like gold. But this time, gold actually went down. And meanwhile, Bitcoin, a classic risk-on asset that's supposed to love stability, it took an initial dip, sure, but then it surged past $67,000.
So that brings us to the central puzzle we're going to unpack here. Why on earth would the market, which absolutely hates uncertainty, seem to be cheering for an event that could kick off a massive war? Well, the answer, believe it or not, isn't in the Middle East. It's in a high-stakes corporate showdown that went down just days before in Silicon Valley.
To really understand what happened on Saturday, we have to rewind the tape just a little bit. The story really begins with two of the biggest names in AI, OpenAI and Anthropic, who are locked in this fierce battle over a really important Pentagon contract. I mean, just look at this timeline. It is absolutely breathtaking how fast this all happened. We're talking less than 72 hours. So on Wednesday, you've got AI employees signing a petition about safety. By Thursday, Anthropic's CEO is publicly refusing the Pentagon's terms. Friday morning, the president himself orders them blacklisted. And by Friday evening, OpenAI swoops in and signs a replacement deal. Literally just a few hours after that, the bombs start falling on Tehran.
The way the government did this was catastrophic for Anthropic. They designated them a supply chain risk to national security. Now, you have to understand, this is a label the U.S. government has used for foreign companies like Huawei, companies they suspect of being tools for other governments. To slap that on an American company, it's totally unprecedented. It basically vaporized their ability to do business not just with the Pentagon, but with the entire American defense industry.
This whole thing was so unusual that it prompted Senator Mark Warner, who's the vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, to ask out loud if this was actually about national security or if it was based on, quote, political considerations. He was basically asking if this was a move to steer a contract to a buddy. So, was it?
Well, to get closer to the answer, we have to do what you always do. Follow the money. And, public records from the Federal Election Commission, they paint a pretty vivid picture.
Yeah, the financial gap between these two companies is, well, it's not a gap, it's a chasm. Public records show that OpenAI's leadership has donated a staggering $76 million to Trump-affiliated PACs. And Anthropic, if you look them up in those same records, you find nothing, a big fat zero.
Now remember that official explanation? A Pentagon official told the press the issue with Anthropic's CEO was ideological. When you see a word like ideological right next to a slide showing a $76 million difference in political donations, it kind of makes you wonder what ideology we're really talking about here, doesn't it? But this wasn't just about the money. See, both companies publicly claimed to have the same red lines on AI safety, especially when it came to things like autonomous weapons. The thing is, when you actually dig into the details, you find out their definitions of a red line are, well, they're worlds apart.
I think this is the best analogy I've heard for it. Think of Anthropic's red line as a load-bearing wall in a house. It's hard-coded right into the AI's core architecture. If you wanted to remove it, you'd have to basically tear down the house and rebuild the whole thing. OpenAI's approach, it's more like wallpaper. It's a safety stack, a layer of rules and software that OpenAI itself designs, puts in place, and audits. It looks nice, but at the end of the day, you can just peel it right off.
And the key to peeling off that wallpaper is one single word in their agreement: appropriate. The deal says there must be an appropriate level of human judgment. But here's the catch. The word appropriate is never actually defined. This creates a loophole you could drive a truck through. Because who gets to decide what's appropriate? The user does. So today, that might mean a human has to physically push a button. Tomorrow, it could just mean a human is somewhere in the same building.
So forget the technical stuff for a second. The business impact for Anthropic was immediate and just devastating. The government's decision created this massive chilling effect. As one tech analyst put it, from now on, any defense contractor is going to have to ask their lawyers, is using Anthropic's AI really worth the risk of us getting blacklisted too?
Okay, so with all that context, the insane speed of the contract swap, the money trail, the wallpaper-thin safety measures, let's go back to Saturday morning and finally figure out what the 24/7 crypto market was actually screaming at us.
The price chart really tells the whole story. As soon as the first reports of the airstrikes hit, Bitcoin plunged from around 65K down to 63K. That was the panic. It was the only market open in the world, so all of that global fear got priced into it instantly. But then, the news broke confirming the supreme leader was dead, and Bitcoin didn't just bounce back, it rocketed all the way up to $67,000.
And the betting markets show us exactly why this happened. Look at this. When asked who will be Iran's next supreme leader, the #1 bet, with 55% odds, isn't a person. The top bet is that the position itself will be abolished. Traders are literally betting that the regime is over. And that is the absolute key takeaway here. Markets fear uncertainty more than anything else, way more than they fear bad news. For months, the big risk hanging over everything was a potential, drawn-out conflict with Iran. The strike, as shocking as it was, wasn't seen as the start of a war. For traders, it was the decisive end of one. It was the resolution of risk.
But here's the thing. While the market is betting on certainty, this story is far, far from over. Markets can be wrong, and what traders are seeing as a resolution, well, it could actually be the start of something much, much more dangerous.
So here are 3 huge things to keep an eye on. First, Iran's retaliation. Are we going to see it escalate? Second, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran announced they're closing it, but will they actually enforce it? A real closure would choke off 20% of the world's entire oil supply. And third, that emergency OPEC meeting. Whatever the big oil-producing nations signal there is going to tell us everything we need to know about where energy prices are headed.
So, a fight that started over an AI contract in Washington ends with airstrikes in Tehran. It's just a crazy reminder of how quickly a battle over tech and politics can spiral into a global crisis. And it leaves us with one final choice. In moments like these, when the headlines are just screaming about World War III, what do you trust? The emotional narrative, or the cold, hard data that's telling a completely different story? How you answer that, well, it might just change how you see everything.